Hello, my name is Sarah Stoker. I write a newsletter called If You Know, You Know, and my goal is to make learning about AI feel more like a coffee chat rather than reading a textbook. I have the joy and privilege of speaking with my good friend Parth today. Parth, could you introduce yourself and tell us why we're talking?
Yeah, I'm Parth. I'm based in Los Angeles. I'm obsessed with technology, especially language models. And most of the time I spend my days working on like chatbots and natural language automation, AI agents, stuff like that. Just trying to tinker with these tools that have come out since ChatGPT. You know, if you can talk to the computer, what can the computer do for you? Which is kind of like where my head's at. Yeah, I'm excited to be here and kind of just demystify some of like the more recent changes that are, happening in the AI ecosystem and like technologies that are coming out, and hopefully share some of my weird sci-fi vision for what's coming next. Yeah.
Oh man, just to give you some context, Parth and I met last year and had a night that involved a lot of Chick-fil-A, and I knew we were going to be quick friends. So I could listen to what he says. We sat around a fireplace over at Todd's and just heard all about his thoughts and theories. And I was like, okay, I need to actually record this, and like the world needs to hear what you're saying. So
I don't often do this. So I'm glad.
I know. I had to, just so you know, I've had to text Parth probably 6 times to make this happen. So I am like just thrilled you showed up on time, ready to go. You got your microphone. But let's zoom back, take us up a couple steps back. Tell me about you as in the 3rd grade. What kind of things were you doing? Who was your friend group? What were your parents like? Tell me who you were, Parth, as like an 8-year-old.
8-year-old Parth. Okay. Yeah, this will be good. When I was like, I grew up growing up, I was kind of like I was your classic nerd. I read more books than anyone. I was like obsessed with dinosaurs. When I was 8, yeah, I definitely thought that I would be a paleontologist when I grew up. But I was just like, oh man, one day I'm going to find a T-Rex in the ground, and then I'm going to make that my like living room kind of like. You're going to come into my house and there's going to be a T-Rex in the living room. And that's what I genuinely was like, I'm going to be a paleontologist.
But aren't you now, you're kind of time traveling now in a way.
Yeah. I mean, I think the cool thing about AI is that it allows you to reach into a lot of different topics. So like the stuff that I thought that would require multiple lifetimes, now because of AI, you can kind of explore things and become more explore your multifaceted interests. So I think, at the time I was like, obsessed with dinosaurs. So I'd go to the library and I'd read every single book I could on dinosaurs. And then I'd go to the librarian and I'd be like, you need to get more books. I've already read all of them.
What's your favorite dinosaur?
It's T-Rex.
Nice.
It's kind of basic, but I just think it's it's cool. It's cool. Like I haven't really changed in that sense. I think as a kid, a lot of what I liked as a kid, I just like more now. So like my dad got me Super Mario Brothers when I was 6. And then he got me then I played like Roller Coaster Tycoon, so I played a lot of like
Zoo Tycoon.
Yep.
Sims,
Zoo Tycoon.
Sims 2, Sims 4.
All of that's actually incredibly relevant because it shaped my view of like what technology was capable of early on. I think when I got my first job, I was looking around and I was like, wow, I worked for like an older company and they still had paper, and so I was looking around the office to be like, wow, like a lot of people here move paper from one part of the office to the other, and then they put it into some folder. And then I'd go home and I'd play Roller Coaster Tycoon, and everything would be digitized. So you have like a digital finance operation because it's all just like numbers in a computer. And I felt that was like, oh wow, so like video games are in some ways more advanced than reality. Like the units in a video game are listening to my instructions, helping me run this imaginary business. And I always thought that was like, that inspired me because it was like, okay, cool. Like if you start digitizing things, you can do these, like, you can arrange information in a way that's more intuitive to like children. Right. So like, why is like when you play a game like Roller Coaster Tycoon, you start learning about concepts like how to run a business, how to design a profitable theme park, and like
how
the underlying
sure doesn't like get too long, so build a couple of them.
Optimizing the like route around your theme park, making sure people are having fun, like, and then like, is your business like working, or does your roller coaster actually get people to like? So all those things were getting me thinking about like systems and thinking about optimization. So like I'm a very like optimization kind of guy. Like I always think about, oh, well, why can't we just do it faster? Or like, can we do it like, can we go deeper? Can we go further? Everything I think is like when you move it into the computer, now the computer can do many things that a human can't because we're like lazy and honestly like, I mean,
is that the reason you think? Because we're lazy?
Well, no, we designed the computer to be productive in ways that human beings are not naturally. Like if you were to ask me to come up with like 100 strategies, I'd be like, go home. Like, I don't want to. But, you know, go to ChatGPT, come up with 100 strategies. Like,
let's go.
It's not going to, you know, it'll try. It'll try. Yeah. So yeah, played a lot of video games, ate a lot of chocolate and junk food, read a lot of books, and a lot of board games. I love board games. So like in the beginning, I was playing a lot of Monopoly and Risk, and I realized like you can win every game if you learn the strategy and everyone else is just playing casually. Like in Monopoly, you just buy every property. In Risk, it's like
you just take over the world.
Yeah, but as I played those games, I realized like those games aren't necessarily fun for everyone. Actually, the moment someone gets ahead in Monopoly or in Risk, the game becomes miserable for everyone else. Yeah. So that's when I was like, okay, so there's like fun games, and then there's games that are kind of just like, you know, 2 hours in, people just want to flip the board over.
What's your thoughts on Settlers on Catan?
I think Settlers is one of my favorite games ever.
It feels like a little more spread out, you know.
Yeah, a lot of people. I think the cool thing. I think one way to make a game fun is like give more people a chance to feel like they're in it towards the end. So like at the end of a Settlers game, there's like 3 rounds left. It's like there's a couple people vying for that victory spot, and everything can change in 1 or 2 turns if like someone pulls an alliance off. So I think Settlers is a good game. It's like a very like it's got trading, it's got like subjective value, it's a little random, but then everyone's got a different strategy, and I think that's awesome. So yeah, my brother and I have a younger brother. He's 6 years younger than me, and so like. And a lot of what we do, like a lot of our interests are the same. So like he's always putting me on video games, or like I'll come back and he'll be like, oh, check out this board game we got.
Have you played Monopoly Go? I mean, I'm sure we're going to get into AI soon, I promise. But have you heard of Monopoly Go?
I've heard of it. I've heard it's like, I've seen videos on TikTok, but I haven't played yet.
It's very fun. It's like super quick Monopoly. You can honestly play it when you're camping. It's a blast. Yeah. Okay. And then whereabouts were you growing up? And then when did you move to LA?
Yeah, so I grew up in the Bay Area, so San Jose, Santa Clara. So
nice.
Kind of, I like to think of it as like the real heart of Silicon Valley, where actual silicon, if you think about Silicon Valley and San Francisco, I think that's where a lot of software projects are. But the South Bay is where like the chip companies are, NVIDIA, AMD. So growing up, like both my parents worked in chip design. My mom works on like biochips and like putting the human genome on a chip, that kind of tech. And then my dad works on chip design software. So like the tools that teams like NVIDIA use to design their next generation. So like, or Apple, when anyone wants to build a chip. Meta
just released their chip too, I think.
Yeah. So like whenever these guys have a new chip, they have to design it in a couple of years before the chip even comes out. They're in the design phases. And so my dad his company works on the software that is used to design chips, which has been cool to see. Like they've both worked at those companies like my entire life. And so I've seen those industries go from like, I mean, they were always important, but they've only ever gotten more and more important. Like the demand for chips kept going up. In the beginning, like my dad was like, oh, we're working with NVIDIA. And, you know, when I was like 15, I asked my dad for a PlayStation and he was like, no. And then I was like, well, what if you let me build a computer, which is more expensive than a PlayStation? But my dad was like, yes, because that would be a learning experience. So he I went to Fry's Electronics. I like made a list of all the parts, and then we went and bought them, and I built my own computer.
How old were you when this happened?
I think I was like, this is middle school, maybe like 8th grade. And my brother, you know, he was there with me. So like anything that I did, my brother did like 6-7 years early. So like I got obsessed with the Rubik's Cube in middle school, and I taught my brother when he was like 6 or 7. And it was pretty important to me that he understood how to do it that early, because I was like, you know, you solve the Rubik's Cube. And I think if anyone watching this is like a Rubik's Cube nerd, you'll probably understand. But you solve the Rubik's Cube, and it's a really empowering moment because you realize everyone thinks that you have some magical talent in your hands.
That's what I'm thinking, like literally right now. I'm like,
yeah. But every cuber, everyone who finishes solving the cube for the first time, they're like, wait, no, I just studied it and learned the technique, and then now I can do this thing. But everyone's going to overestimate me from this point on that. They'll be like, so my friends and I, we were obsessed with this because we were like, we just had too much time on our hands. Then I got my brother into it, and
unintended.
Yeah, basically, like, and we're out here like trying to figure out how to solve it faster, how to solve it like, solve bigger cubes. And then I wanted to stay ahead of all my friends, so then I was like, well, I need to do something that's actually hard that'll get them to stop chasing me. And so then I was like, I'll solve it blindfolded. So I figured out how to solve it blindfolded, and you can just go to YouTube and learn because there's other kids that have really good. Actually, the best cubers in the world are all kids, or they were kids when they set those records, because you need time and you need to have you need to think that it's possible. I think that's what the cube teaches you I think that's why I teach my friends the cube. It's because I hope that they walk away thinking, oh, maybe people are overestimating this problem because I know how to do this. And so like when someone says like, that's hard, like in many cases you should ignore them because they've never even tried. So why would you listen to someone who doesn't, if you ask someone who's done it, they're not going to say, they're going to give you a reasonable path forward. But if you ask someone who just watches other people do it, they can't, you don't go to that person for advice. So you don't go to someone for advice on the Rubik's Cube if they've never picked one up and solved it.
What was the fastest time? Is that not cool to ask? I'm not sure.
No, it's cool. That's cool. That's cool to ask. So if they're speed cubers, they'll know. I in the beginning, so the first time I ever solved it, I had to look at the manual. It took me 3 hours, and then I got obsessed. So that's all I did for the next couple days. And 2 days later, I was down to 2 minutes. And then a week later, I was under 1 minute. And then my friends were they saw that, right? They saw me go from not knowing to under a minute in less than a month. And then they started buying cubes. And we all bought fast cubes, and we got speed cubes. Actually, now I don't know where I put it. I have a cube, but now my cube now has Bluetooth, is connected to my phone, and can send information to my phone it basically has tech inside the cube. It's a smart cube, so it's tracking stats. But basically, we got obsessed with the cube. So then we solved bigger cubes. I solved it blindfolded, and then people were okay, most people are not going to go memorize enough techniques to go solve a cube blindfolded. That's a little bit more of a effort to clear. But then my brother has he told one of his friends that I could do it blindfolded, and his brother my brother's friend ended up setting North American records and can solve 45 cubes in one sitting with his eyes closed. So even within the world of cubing, there's a huge you can do way harder things. They're way harder challenges, and then I think it's you see someone that's 15 and then they're doing something and they're and you realize they've found a smarter way to attack this problem than you. And then when you talk to them, they explain it and you're wow, this is cool. And so I'm that's why I love the speed cubing community. If you ever go to Netflix, there's a documentary on speed cubing. It's really good. And
you're in it. No, I'm just kidding.
No, okay, my brother's friends are in it. And so it's kind of oh wow, it's just a bunch of kids playing around. And then those people are at the front of this game. And so I like that.
That's awesome. No, I'm seeing that's why I love talking about who you are, because I see so much of, the Zoo Tycoon, the speed cubes. Now you're obsessed with solving different kinds of problems.
Yep.
Tell me about the main problem you're trying to solve right now.
Yeah. So pretty much ever since ChatGPT came out November 2022, I think. So when it came out, I was hanging out on Clubhouse, which is the audio app from the pandemic. So I was hanging out on Clubhouse, and I kept meeting people and it was the most popular topic in every single country, in every single language. People are talking about ChatGPT and how it's changing the way they think about different things. And I met people farmers from my home state in India, and they were using ChatGPT to help think about their crop cycle planning. And in that moment, I was and I was talking to these guys. I was wow, you're basically got a data scientist in your pocket And then I'm starting to think like, wait, but even like, and I'm a data scientist, data analyst. So I was like, even like, I can't do many of those things. And you have it. So instead of thinking about it as like, oh, it helps me reply to an email, I'm thinking like, well, for someone else, this is an actual computer. Like it's like a research lab. It's like your analytics team for the average person, which is crazy. Like the idea that all of us are walking around and for $20 a month, you can have like the best AI on the planet operating on your behalf, solving your problems. That hit me like a truck. Like the idea that all of a sudden everyone could possibly like tap into this like cognitive superpowers, like, and that was pretty insane. And then like I met a guy and he was like, oh, you should be talking to GPT-4. It's really good at programming. And I'd kind of like put off programming. Like I program when I need to, but I kind of didn't make it my main role. Like for the last couple of years. Because at this
point, you were at Clubhouse, correct?
Yeah, okay, I worked at Clubhouse.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about like maybe some career stuff alongside these realizations.
Yeah, so starting off, I was like, I've worked at startups most of my career. I mean, I've been all over the place. So coming out of college, I worked at a startup. So my internships were in different tech companies. A couple of them were big. So big semiconductor companies, and then medical devices. So when I was at big companies, I saw a lot of like, here's how big companies operate. Here's how you like. I didn't think it was right that there was so much paper, but then I realized
literally taking paper and then just putting it in a different folder.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know. I got video game characters that are slightly more interesting than like that role, in my opinion. I was like, so I was like, this is interesting. Like once this gets digitized, then we'll be able to move way faster. Mm-hmm. So like one thing that frustrated me was like, you go to a finance meeting and you'd be recapping like some spreadsheet. And I'm like, that spreadsheet was only up to date 2 weeks ago. Now you decide to look at it. And I was like, I guess we just are okay with information being slow, like reviewing things on a quarterly cycle. So that was like my mindset was like, okay, some parts of the organization don't have the ability to think quickly because the systems are kind of old and like clunky. But then I was like, okay, maybe it's like a big company thing. So I need to go to a small team, see if they think differently. So then I went to my first startup. I worked at a company called Chow Now, and they do like online ordering for restaurants. Mm-hmm. And that's when I was like exposed to the idea of analytics. Like, what does it look like when you can answer a business question about today's business today? Like something happened an hour ago. Can you answer a question about it? Like, do you know like what's working and what's not working? And up until that point, I'd been thinking about how much things cost. So like I was thinking about everything from a finance perspective. But then now is like, okay, but what actually works? Like which products are working? What do people love about us? Like, why are they using our product? What's not working? Mm-hmm. And those are like all analytics questions. And so at Chow Now, I had the opportunity to put together a team and build a data platform and try to understand that. So we went from Google Sheets and spreadsheets to analytics in like 2 years, which is pretty awesome. And I got exposure to this like concept of like being able to calculate things about a business really quickly and like getting deeper insights, so like if you gave someone the right dashboard, then when they're on the phone with the customer, like they can actually be really, really like they know everything about that customer's business. Then that person comes off as an expert and can really position the product in the right way.
And you were building like a dashboard like that.
I built dashboards for literally everyone. Like that was my bread and butter. I was like, I built dashboards for sales reps, for account managers, for customer support reps. And then like those people would love the dashboards. And then like their managers would be like, can you build one for me? And then, so I was building dashboards for every layer of the business. And that was really cool. And then I took a break from Chow Now to work on, in 2020, there was a presidential campaign, right? And one of the candidates, his name was Andrew Yang. Mm-hmm. And he was running for president on this idea of like math and introducing like quantitative like ideals to this like very like popularity contest world that we live in. I was like, oh, here's a nerd. He's running on math. Like no shot, but I'm down. Like whatever. Like that's the kind of like, I was like, okay. Like I saw a nerd. I saw a guy who was thinking about automation. I was thinking about like the future and like trends in labor. And I thought like, okay, well, it might not be your traditional politician, but here's a way of thinking about problems that could be useful on this larger stage. And people thought I was like, they're like, nah, you're like 50 years in the future with this automation stuff. Little did I know that ChatGPT was coming out. But so I did that. I worked on a presidential campaign, super fun, met some of the craziest cool like builders. And I think we definitely moved the needle on like how people talk about automation. Like we gave people, like it was weird when we did it, but now it's like, now everyone can do it. Now it's like pretty important.
I did not know you worked on a presidential campaign. That's really cool.
Yeah. I
want to ask you your thoughts on this one. We'll just leave this for AI, but
yeah,
good to know.
But yeah, basically, like I like to think of us as like normalizing talking about automation, and I think we probably underestimated at the time how much of that automation was going to affect white collar jobs. But you could not have. I honestly think that ChatGPT came out 100 years before, in my mind, it was going to come out. Like in my mind, I'm basing my expectations of the future off of like sci-fi, plus mixed with like the tech that I use. So it's like, oh, I play video game. It's like, oh, what if that made it into this industry? Or like these people using this, it's really expensive, but like 10 years from now, if it's cheap, then it's going to be used in this other way. And I always thought like we had Siri, we had Google Assistant, we had Cortana, we had all these like, and we had video game characters you can talk to, not in this natural language like ChatGPT way, but I imagine like eventually you'd probably get like something like ChatGPT. It's just probably be 100 years out. Like you watch enough sci-fi, you imagine it. It's like, it's reasonable. But then when ChatGPT came out, I was like, whoa, this is 100 years early. What?
We're here.
Like we're here. Like
we've time traveled. We're now.
This is not my grandkids. Like this is not my grandkids' problem. Like everything that I thought like I wouldn't have to deal with in my lifetime, all of a sudden is now an opportunity. Best
present ever. Okay, so you left, the presidential campaign ended, and then did you jump into Clubhouse? You take some time?
No. So I spent some time. That was when the pandemic hit. So I worked with two friends in the Bay Area on like a productivity tool in the web browser, because we were like, well, what if like more work ends up in the web browser? Like we should probably solve this tab clutter problem because everyone's got a zillion tabs, which was fun. But just like, I don't know if it was like enough to build a business off of. It was very like, but it was building something from scratch with friends from college. Like there's nothing quite like that. The world's going to end, get your friends together and just try to do something useful was what we were thinking. Didn't work out. So then we kind of phased it down. And then I worked on Clubhouse.
Yeah.
And then pretty much, then like 13 months ago, GPT-4 comes out and I start programming with GPT-4. And then we had layoffs at Clubhouse. And I thought to myself, well, this is great. Now I get to focus my entire like attention on this new problem space.
This is where the good stuff happens.
Yeah. This is where I started going crazy. Because basically like, I was like, okay, I was writing programs with GPT-4 and I was writing programs that could write other programs just to see like how good GPT-4 is at generating code. I think it's better at generating code than I am, like being a self-taught programmer that's like new to this. So for me, GPT-4 is like, it's like a CTO. It's like someone you count on to be technical in ways that you aren't. And I always have it pushing me to this new level. So I go to ChatGPT. It's always like, teach me how to do this in Python. Like, teach me how to clone my voice. Teach me how to build a chatbot. All those questions are questions that I asked like a year ago. And not only can GPT-4 answer some of those questions, but it can teach you how to implement the thing. So it's like, I'll be like, teach me how to clone my voice. And this was like a random Sunday. I was like, teach me how to clone my voice. And it showed me how to use some like open source text to speech library. So I was like, well, actually teach me how to install Python and set up my programming environment. And then it shows you how to do that. And then I was like, whoa, this is like the least judgmental learning experience of all time.
Wow.
And general, I mean, I have an opinion that like programming is uninviting because the introduction experience is not intuitive or like friendly. So like you don't know where to
start. I spent like an hour on GitHub last week and I was like, I feel like the stupidest person out
Which
there.
Is exactly the problem. Is like there's like 3 hours of other things that they have you doing before you actually write a program. Yeah. And the only thing that actually matters is that you have fun writing programs. Because the other stuff is like I don't think you should spend any time on GitHub until after you've like figured out like I wish it was just you just jump into programming. And I think we're getting tools like Replit are exactly that like new form of thinking where it's like, well, what if the software is so smart, it handled all the like stupid setup stuff. And then you could just focus on like, hey, what if we made this cool new thing? And then AI helps you make the prototype. Maybe it writes the first version of your program. But all of a sudden you realize, so what happened was like, I was like, yo, teach me how to clone my voice. It teaches me, it writes the first version of the script. It teaches me how to install Python, set up my environment. So I have this like, generally like you go to someone more experienced than you and you ask them to set up your computer. Cause that's like, I don't know how else you're supposed to learn how to get set up. But now you have AI and it's there 24/7. You can ask stupid questions, which is.
So you're like, your prompt is, hey, can you clone my voice? Give me the code to do that in Python. And then you're downloading,
Well, I was like, how do you clone your voice? And then it shows you a bunch of options. And I was like, okay, actually like, how would you do this in Python? And then it's like, here's how you do it. And then I'll be like, well, actually, I don't even have Python installed on my computer. And then it's like, okay, here's how you set up Python. So like at every level, it's trying to meet me where I am. So I'm like, okay, like, how do I do the thing? Okay, now I know how to do the thing. But like, how do I actually like do like every individual step of like, that was previously basically in 3 hours, you and this chatbot will get something done. And then at the end, I was like, oh my God, I thought this was going to take me like 3 or 6 months.
Wow.
But really, it's just like you ask the right questions, you sit there for an afternoon, and the chatbot will do most of the work. And then it might make some mistakes, but as long as you feed those errors back in, and you're like, hey, can you help me reflect on what went wrong here? And then it's like, oh, you're right, I made a mistake. And so you have this back and forth, this intelligent like back and forth with this system that also knows every programming language. Like, it's not just Python. Like it understands like so many topics. This is the thing about general intelligence is that like I can say, help me think about a new way to rank music. And I can sit here and program a new way to rank music for myself using a chatbot, like, or using GPT. So you can basically, then I realized like, you don't need, like you just need to have an idea of what you want. And then you need to turn that into the right questions. And then the AI can help you figure out how to make that real. And there are things that have not been done yet that are possible that people are going to build because AI told them it was possible. It was within their skill set, right? Like,
but that catalyst kind of moment when you're saying, oh, I want to know what it's like to clone my voice, that didn't come from a chatbot, that came from you. So I think that's kind of the stuff that excites me of like, oh, what are the problems that we're seeing in the world? And then like getting curious about them, having some time to reflect on them. And then the possibilities are endless with the chatbot. I know you love OpenAI. I love Anthropic products, but it's okay.
No, I have a Claude key. I'm benchmarking Claude versus GPT-4. So and then I'm this weekend I'll probably pick up Gemini as well. Nice. My thing is like I'm not attached to one platform. I'm like more like you can expect me to use state-of-the-art language models wherever just because if you're going to talk, I think the difference between 3.5 and 4 is for me very obvious. Yeah. But it's like, it's important enough to me that basically GPT-4 is able to use tools, is able to like handle larger context. That's more important to me than simply autocomplete. Like I think the difference is almost like between a high school 3.5 being closer to a high school student and GPT-4 being like a grad student with a laptop.
Yeah. I mean, like, that was exactly my journey. Was I wasn't paying for any of them. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to start paying for ChatGPT-4. And I was like, okay, this is great. I love this. But like,
it's the best investment you can make in your own intelligence.
Yeah.
Like people are like, oh, I don't know if it's worth it at $20. Then I just put them on my family plan. Like I have a Teams plan and I just have friends on it because I would rather them discover like what a language model that can use tools is capable of than what they think is possible with 3.5. There's a learning curve to using these tools. I think, like getting the most out of it requires you to communicate pretty effectively, like your own strengths, but also like your hopes, what you hope is possible, what you want to learn. And that requires effort. Like every button press is actually effort. So everything, how you craft your prompt is effort. And it's not, if you don't see why you need something like this or why some technology like this could be useful, like you may never discover what it can do for you, right? Like, so there is a learning curve here. And I think this is why I'm so interested in this. Partly because I thought it was going to be even more obvious to people, but maybe it hasn't been. And I think in some ways, like some people pick up the technology faster than others, and that interests me. Like, why is it that kids are so good at using ChatGPT? And then when I go to UCLA and I talk to a bunch of kids, and I realize it's because they need it. Like they have too much homework, and then they're like, well, if you assign me 6 essays, I'll probably generate 3 or 4 of them.
You're like,
and then the teacher's like
breeds the most creative solutions.
And then the teacher's like using GPT to help correct stuff. So it's really like on every level, education gets transformed. And I genuinely think that like this is good for education. If you have a teacher in your pocket that doesn't judge you, that meets you at your level, like there are so many topics that are outside of my knowledge, like outside of my aptitude, where I am today, like what I currently know. But if I go and say, hey, just explain this to me like I'm 5. Okay, cool. So then it explains it like, hey, now explain like I'm 6. And then I just do every single age above that. And I'm like, and then I'll be like, okay, explain it like I'm, and then I'll literally put my description in. I'll be like, I'm a data analyst looking to pick this stuff up. I'm self-taught. And then I'll just put in a paragraph of like, I love games and music. And then I'm like, explain it within that. And then the cool thing is language model will try to make that difficult topic make sense.
Yeah.
Try to make it fun and interesting. You could be like, explain it to me like I like Spider-Man. And then it'll, try to reason some analogy of like Spider-Man into the story. And that's really interesting. I think a lot of, and this goes back to video games, and I'm going to bring it back to video games because that's what I do.
Because why not?
If you think about video games, like I was talking to my dad, he was like, I could never have imagined you would just pick up a game and that game would teach you business concepts. But that's what Roller Coaster Tycoon is, right? Like, I'm not telling you how to think about your finances of your park, but you see a number, a green number, you need to turn the profit number up. Like this ride is bleeding you out. But why would a 7-year-old want to learn something like business? You don't like those things aren't like. So what I realized is that the video games are actually a really powerful way to teach people, and that we take those concepts we learn in video games and we apply them elsewhere. In the same way that you read a book and then hopefully you take some substance out of that book and then you apply it in your life. Video games allow you to like experiment in this sandbox. I think board games do this too, which is like in Settlers of Catan, you're practicing making deals with people. Same thing in Monopoly, right? Like, 3 sheep for 1 brick. And like, you're like, no deal because you need this brick and I have plenty of sheep.
You have to lie to someone else, and you're like, okay, I have to say yes to everything that you say. So
and then you realize you're on the receiving end of like a deal where like you're not getting. So all that comes like you play 100 games of Catan. I guarantee you learn something about making deals with people and what a good deal looks like and when to make deals. But it's not like that's not like it's not obvious to people from the like same thing with video games. They sometimes get a bad rap. But my dad he pointed this out like last.
Did he eventually buy you the PlayStation or no?
No, he didn't buy me. We built a computer that would have cost twice as much of a PlayStation, so I feel like I won out. But really, he won out because he was like, well, now I get to teach you about like chips, right? Like what is RAM? What is a CPU? What is a GPU?
Yep.
And for me, like he loved computers. My mom they both work in tech. So for me, I ended up getting even more in love with computers because I had that experience of like building my own. My brother built his own computer. All of our friends build our own computers. So we're all very similar in that way. Like once we have, so we have like a tribe of like PC gamers. And maybe like I think that might be a dying thing. Like, I don't know. Like actually, let me see if I can show you.
Are you showing me your setup?
Yeah. Oh, it's probably better. You can't really see from this angle, but it's like RGB. It's like tons of like, it's just rainbow colored. I can control all the lights too. So for me, it's like a project I've been working on this since, this is a new, like one of the parts came from the original computer I built, but like you're always upgrading it. You're thinking about what you need. It's kind of like a car. Like I don't have a car, but I imagine how car people are. When I talk to car people, I'm like, oh, you're feeling with like your relationship with your car is very similar to my relationship with my computer. Like your car takes you on a freeway. Mine takes me on the internet freeways, right? So
the longest journey of them all.
Yeah.
No, I love it. And I love hearing all of the origin story is amazing because I know we're already, 30 minutes in and we haven't even gotten to what are you working on now? We made the people wait. But do you want to tell us?
We can edit it down, but
No, we're not doing that. We're going to keep all these. But tell me what you're working on now.
Yeah. So once ChatGPT came out and I started writing programs again, started writing Python, it started teaching me Python. And I started doing that like every single day, like Saturday, Sunday, every day. I'd sit down for a couple hours, talk to ChatGPT, and have it teach me some concept in programming. Because for me, I was like, okay, learning this has never been easier. And then also because I can use this newfound knowledge of programming to build tools like ChatGPT. So like if you actually sit there and ask ChatGPT to help you build a GPT-3 powered chatbot, which I did this once. So I'm just like, if I can clone my voice in 3 hours, how long does it take to build a chatbot? So it turns out you sit there, you say, teach me how to build a GPT powered chatbot. It'll write the first version of that script. And then you'll be surprised because it's like 15, 20 lines of code. It's not a full feature rich. It's not ChatGPT has like a couple hundred people working on it, but you can have a chatbot in a loop sitting on, running on GPT-4 in like 15, 20 lines of code. That's what OpenAI has done. They've made it possible to leverage AI without having to train the underlying model. So you can use their model, which is really good at generating text. They also have DALL-E, great at generating pictures. So I don't have to train an image model. I use DALL-E. They even have a vision model. So you can put an image in or a video in, and then it can tell you, it can try to reason with you on what's happening in that image or in that video. So if I'm working on music, you can take a screenshot of your screen, send it to GPT and be like, help, I'm stuck. I'm trying to like arrange my song. How do I like flesh out this song? And it'll be like, well, maybe you move this section to the intro. So vision gives the language model even more like of a clear picture of like what your problem is. And it's very information dense. So like, I think the kind of stuff that I do these days is like, well, what kind of context do I need to give the language model to solve my problem? It might be like, watch my screen, or it'd be like, or I might be like, I want to come up with a plan, but I want to go through a bunch of different options. So before I start my plan, I'll have a language model come out with like 5 or 6 strategies. And then it'll go through each strategy, evaluate some pros and cons. And I want it to take into a bunch of different considerations. Like, here's my skill set, or I'm alone. So like, don't give me a solution that requires 50 people. Like, these are things that are interesting that you can start. Like, I think saying like, I spent 1 month on GPT, just like working on music projects, just having it teach me music in a way that's like fun, right? So like, turns out the language model, having absorbed so much knowledge of the internet, it's got some understanding of music theory. It's got some understanding of like the tools you use. So if you say, I'm working in Ableton, like it's like absorb the Ableton manual, right?
Yep.
Or you can even put a synthesizer manual behind a language model and then have it pretend and just like teach you that how to use that tech as if it's like the engineer that built it and wrote that documentation. So I think that's awesome. I think language models are a faster way to learn about the world than even YouTube. And I thought
you're
YouTube
going to release your music video soon, right?
Well, there is a video. If you go to my YouTube channel, there is a music video, and I've made it. So I wrote the song myself, but then I used Midjourney, GPT-4, and so I basically went to GPT-4 and I was like, hey, I have a tool called Midjourney. It generates images. I also have a tool called Runway. It takes images and turns them into video 4 seconds long. The reason you have to give this context is because the language model only knows something, like has a knowledge cutoff. So it doesn't actually know what these tools are yet. Maybe GPT-5 will. But when you say you have access, like, here are the tools I have. How do I make a music video that's maybe 3 minutes long for a bass music song? Like, if I can generate images and they can be pretty much whatever we imagine. And then I can turn those images into 4-second clips of video. And then the language model is like, okay, well, actually, if you add an editing tool, you can also like extend those 4-second videos. There's like, these are your options. It's like, we can generate like 50 different images. The ones you like, we'll feed them into the video model, and then, generate a couple hundred videos, and then the clips that you like, we'll put them into the like editing track, and then it'll be like, oh, and then you can beat match it, right? So like, if your BPM is this, then actually like you want to switch the shot every X number of seconds. And all of this is just like, I'm not, we're in LA, but I'm not from Hollywood. So for me, it's like, all right, like, let's try it. And then I basically pulled 2 all-nighters, and I just was generating. And I had a GPT that could so GPT-4 would write the prompt for Midjourney and it would generate 24 images at a time. So just generating. I'd be like, I like this one, I like that one. And so there's a lot of curation involved. But in 2 days, I had a music video for my song. And I was thinking like, wow, like I didn't have to ask anyone permission to do this. Like I didn't have to hit an arbitrary, I don't have any Spotify listeners. I don't have a like public profile as a musician. So, but for me to have a music video, I was very proud. I was like, whoa, like I wrote this song, but now I have a music video. And then my friend who's a DJ, he was like, whoa, do you want to do the visuals for my set? And then I was like, whoa, like that's not even like my job, but and he was like, I'll pay you for it. And I was like, this is awesome. Like I get to do this. Do you remember
the Apple screen where it would like it would have like the crazy backgrounds and like
exactly. That's exactly the kind of stuff. I was like, you just come up with like trippy visuals, and then some DJ is like, whoa, I want those trippy visuals. They're cool. Put my logo on it. Yeah, sure. So for me, I was like, oh, I can now do these things that I used to think were like another like. I think about multiverse Parth. Like I think, well, am I having the most fun? Am I actually doing the right thing?
Yeah.
Or is there a different version of Parth in a different universe that's doing like, what about the version of me that's making video games? Like, is that guy having more fun than me? Or is the version of me that's like only making music instead of like working on tech? But now because of AI, you can kind of do multiple things because the amount of leverage you get out of these tools means that you can reach into these other skill sets. You can use tools that would previously require a whole team. Right. So even within data science, the fact that I can use vision models, the fact that I can generate text, but I'm not the one training the model. Like I'm not training GPT-4, but I'm building like applications around GPT-4 that leverage it. Same thing when you build a custom GPT in ChatGPT, it doesn't require programming skills. It requires like you're designing an assistant. You're saying, here's like your role. Here's how you present information. Like you like to make charts.
Yep.
Or you like to write programs. Like generally you have so you can create like a
you
character.
as like a boss have a vision and you know where you want to go and you just have to like, hey, tell me how to get there, or like organize this data or what have you.
Yeah. And you can design that assistant to be like what you need, right? You could be like,
and is that what you're building now? A bunch of assistants?
Yeah. My main focus is like I build assistants on GPT-4.
Okay.
So like all kinds of assistants. Everything from custom GPTs to like programs that run on my computer that like control my mouse, that can like see my screen when I work, to stuff that like, something that goes through your emails, reads all 800 emails, and then is like, hey, these are the 5 things you need to actually respond to. Everything else I've already categorized and moved away. So I think building chatbots is fun for me because I think it's not clear where they actually go, but I do know where they are going right now. It's like they initially it's like ChatGPT can generate text, so it can come up with strategies and ideas. So I built like a strategy generator. And then I was like, well, what if you gave it tools? Can it actually do the job instead of telling me I got to do the job? Like how far does this go? So it's like, turns out if you connect it to the internet, it can answer questions about what's happening in the real world. Or if you give it access to your email, it can actually like label the emails. It can draft a reply. If you give it access to Notion, it can, you can have it manage a Notion page, populate a page, or like run a database. Or things like a data analyst used to do would be like write SQL queries, and you'd write a SQL query to generate a chart. But actually, ChatGPT can both write the SQL query and write the code to generate the chart. So data analysis means you're no longer writing things by hand and getting stuck at the code layer, but the data analyst is more valuable asking intelligent questions to a language model. The language model should do the nitty-gritty of like scripting that's like build the chart. And if I don't like the chart, you just tell it, oh, actually, I want to explore this new trend, this other aspect. And the language model will get to work rewriting the analysis, running it on the fly. And then that feedback loop is really powerful. Mm-hmm. And
you have some copycats already, right?
Oh, yeah. When I created a bunch of GPTs, and on the day that the GPT store released, there were 6 copycats of my favorite. The one that like my most popular GPT had 6 copycats on day 1. And I know they're copycats because the other people who copied it used the same Midjourney image that I generated. And you know how image generators are. Like you can't generate 2 of the same thing. So if 6 people name their project the same thing as you and they copy your image, it's like, and your image was generated by you, then it's like, you have copycats. And I think there's this aspect of like, Yeah, it's like a new Wild West. So there are people and creators. There are people that don't want to be creative, and I guess they're taking notes. I don't know.
From you. I
Yeah.
have a question, like a tangible thing. I know we've talked about this, so answer this how you want. But
Mhm.
for example, like if I want to write a bunch of LinkedIn posts in my voice of saying, hey, this is who I am, this is my writing, I train it, and then say I want to write a LinkedIn post about cars and how cars are my favorite thing from childhood, and give me a business example and make a LinkedIn post. Like, how would you start that with the agents that you've built so far?
So I think like I have an opinion on AI generated content on LinkedIn. I think there's a lot of GPT out there, and there's a lot of like people auto replying with GPT. I don't think that's a good thing.
Okay.
Because the more people spend time with language models, the more you start you will detect some of the patterns that you see in how a language model presents information. Like it uses similes and metaphors that aren't accessible. It's like where it'll be like very like corny in some ways. And so I kind of have the opposite approach to LinkedIn, which is I bring my actual personality into the post in LinkedIn. If I use AI, it'll be to generate an image. But if I'm generating an image, it's not something that's real. It's something that's not real.
You use
like
LinkedIn as Twitter. You just have like one
yeah. I
just
tweet on LinkedIn. I tweet on LinkedIn, and I don't really even. It's not like I'm like known on Twitter, but I'm very just like I'll put that short quip, and I might put an image that represents it. But I think, I don't think that using GPT-4 to craft copy for social media is the best way necessarily to use GPT-4. Yeah, or language or agents. And I think if you're building like chatbots, like you should help them help them actually amplify your message instead of like try to replace it. I think the more like what people are gonna, I guess it's like you could have GPT generate the copy for your post, but if it's not grounded in some interesting opinion that you have based on some project or something that you've made, it's gonna come off boilerplate. And then it's like, are you better off not having posted? Like maybe you should have just been yourself, right? Like especially if other people are increasingly using the
less
same,
authentic.
right? If everyone else is like using GPT, then you kind of stand out by being like casual.
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe
like
so
GPT
you're saying like, hey, take and like write your article and then say, hey, ChatGPT for whatever agent this is, give me a social media marketing strategy so I can make 15 pieces of content out of this one.
That's a lot better. Okay. I think. Yeah. Helping you come up with strategies, helping you think about cross-platform. That's really where the language model shines. I think it's like transforming text copy is like they'll jump to that. But when you say like, oh, I want people to find me, I want people to know that I have a skill. Is that coming off? Is that how I come across when I post something like this? Like in my case, I might say something that's anti-management consulting because I like to make jokes about management consultants. My friends are management consultants. I just do that because it's fun. But I'll take what I'm about to post. If we go to GPT and be like, does this offend anyone? And it'll be like, this could make management consultants kind of annoyed. And I was like, okay, good. That's exactly what I'm going for.
That's exactly
right?
what I want to happen.
Yeah. So like maybe having it like see if you come off a certain way, or having it like,
doing like a sentiment analysis almost.
Yeah. That like basically I think like you should use the language model to reason with you. Like it's like having for me it's like I tell it to act like a PR.
Yeah.
But in the same way that like, I'm okay with disagreeing with my PR person, right? When I have a strong opinion, this is how I want to present myself. Mm-hmm. You have to actually have an opinion on how to present yourself. Otherwise, the language model will come up with something bland. And then like you might get engagement, but it's not like, is that how you want people to remember you as like GPT? No, you want people to remember you for like the thing that gets you, the thing that's different. Like, yeah, maybe it's like your style. Maybe it's like the vibe. Maybe it's like you want them to realize you think about this thing a lot.
Yeah.
So advising how you come off, I think that the whole strategy thing is perfect. Like,
okay,
like how do I present this idea on YouTube? And then it might come up with like a new like idea for content, like a format. But I think that's pretty.
Yeah.
Keep it grounded in like your unique perspective is important.
Do you have like a blanket advice of someone who's like trying to get better at prompting, of saying, hey, make sure you format your structure like this, or this is how to make your prompts better? Like, what's kind of your blanket advice there?
So I have two slightly different approaches to this, and they may seem like at odds with each other, but I think they make sense. So I think one, I meet people, some people I meet, they'll spend 20 minutes crafting a prompt and then they hit send.
Ooh.
And I'm like, maybe some of your instructions require that amount of like sometimes there's some things that are important and we should be very detailed, and we're like, this nuance matters, so I'm going to spend time on how I communicate this. But the video gamer in me is like, we have hotkeys. Like, we should be moving faster than this. Like, it's actually like, if GPT is like, oh, I can't do that, sometimes I'll just be like, question mark. I'll just question mark, and it'll be like, oh, I'm sorry, I'll get back to work. So sometimes the language model, like, it's like you just want to go quickly to the next step. And in that case, like, I'll just be like, help, fix. So sometimes I'm just looking for the one word that takes me from where I am today to like where, like, can the language model, so I'll screenshot, if my program runs into an error, I'll screenshot it, paste it into ChatGPT, and I'll be like, fix this. And I'm trying to get that across in as few button press, as few letters, as few
you
words as
don't say
possible.
please? Isn't it like a statistic that chatbots are better when you're more polite?
That's even if that's like, I know there's a lot of that out there, like, of like, tip the model. You will never see me write like, no, I think those things like, well, I get ironed out over time. Like when the models get better, they're not going to have these, like, maybe they will. Maybe this is what you get when you train language models on the internet. But I don't think that's like reasonable to expect regular people to understand. And so I would not advise a tactic that is not intuitive. Okay, if that makes sense. Because like I think it's like the things that are not intuitive, that's on the company to iron that out and like, you know, improve the model. If it's not, if it required some like arcane specific knowledge, then we're basically in the old world of programming and gatekeeping. Well, really, it's like, I think there's two modes. One, move fast, in which case try to think about the one word that would allow the model to like take you to the next step of your problem, and then provide the context. So like, it's not just one word. If I'm providing an image, there's a lot of information in that image, right? If I screenshot the song that's in progress, I'll be like, look, I have 3 minutes of music. How do I expand this to 5 minutes? Like, that image is actually where the context is. And then like the prompt can be less communicative. But if you're lazy, another way to do it is to literally speak. So because speaking is faster than typing.
Oh yeah, I use mine all the time.
Yeah.
And I
on mobile, yeah, especially if you're using ChatGPT on mobile, this is where voice is so powerful. Like, I see people sometimes do demos of chatbots and they'll actually like type with their thumbs. I'm like, what are you doing? Just talk to it. Yeah, do speech to text. And then you can rant, right? Yeah. So it's like, if you want to rant, if you want to give a lot of context as text, you can rant. So I know people, like, I got friends that, you know, when they're like stuck in traffic in Los Angeles, right? They'll just ramble to ChatGPT.
Yeah. And honestly, this is turning into a bit of a ramble, and I do love that. I do want to wrap it up and ask you a couple last questions, so we can keep this, you know, under an hour.
What should we cover that I haven't already?
I know. Well, I know you've covered what you're working on, which is agents. But how can we support you? What are you looking for? How can you best market your skill set, and then maybe talk about some things that are exciting in your life, any new projects, anything like that.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess I'll say where I think agents are right now, and then that'll give people a sense of like what I'm hoping we figure out. And if people in the audience, you guys have better ideas or tools that I haven't covered, I'd love to see them. So basically, like, agents are like chatbots. They're pretty good at planning. They can come up with a plan. If you give them the right context, they can actually execute parts of that plan. If you give them the right tools, they can figure out how to use those tools to attack your problem. And, if you schedule them to work on the background, like, you can actually have them running parts of your business or parts of your life on like somewhat autonomously behind the scenes, which is awesome. That's like a lot of leverage. I think people are underestimating that like the actual value there. Then where we're going next, where is kind of like nebulous in two ways, is I don't think that the future is going to be chatbots on a website that you type to. I think it might be like the entire user interface. If these chatbots can act, then theoretically they should be able to move anything on the screen, take any action on your phone. Anything that you use a mouse and keyboard for, some AI system of the future likely will be able to do it, and you'll just have to talk to it, right? Computer do the thing, and then the computer starts doing the thing. Like that's where we're going. So maybe like the user interface also is natural language. So like maybe the actual screens we interact with, like, do they look more like video games? Like, how do we get a more of a real-time interaction? If you have one useful chatbot, does it make, like, are you going to have many? And I think we may actually have many of these assistants working for us behind the scenes. So then if you have many, like, I don't want to have 100 tabs open. But like you play video games and you see like 200 units on a screen doing your job, like doing what you want. There's something about like units working on your behalf. And then maybe the chatbots of the future look more like video games because you want to get it more real time. Or maybe they can interrupt each other. Or maybe they can proactively, like maybe they text you in the morning. They're like, I already checked 800 emails. You only need to look at these three. Like that is really interesting to me. And then can they collaborate with each other? Like can I build like 3 or 4 of them? Can they work together on a problem that's harder? So if people are like interested in tapping into this frontier, and it's a frontier. Most of this is like largely fresh, unsolved greenfield opportunities. So I think that's like where I'm interested in. And I think if people want to be, if you want to catch up to where I am, a lot of my code is just out there. I'm putting more code out there. Yesterday I put 2 more code examples out on my Replit. Replit?
Okay.
So like Replit's like if you look me up on Replit, you'll find a bunch of just basic code examples for how to get started building programs like this. And I think I'm trying to make them accessible at a high school level. So like in the same way that the Rubik's Cube, if I'm going to teach a 6-year-old the Rubik's Cube, I'm going to teach a high schooler how to build AI agents because there's no textbook, right? So we have this opportunity to kind of just like explore the frontier of natural language together. And I think that's really interesting. I think the job market can be whatever it is, but if you're out here studying something, like you might get a job from the future. You never know. Like you might the jobs of the future, I guarantee, are more interesting. Yeah. And probably more satisfying than the jobs we have today. And I think if you start working with these systems, you can you get a clearer picture of where the future is.
And how to be a part of that.
Yeah, and how to be part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, last question. What is the mantra, vibe, sentence, quote, fill in the blank that you think about when the days get tough and you're doing the second all-nighter on your music video, or you go outside and you're like, oh, wow, it's sunny. What is that quote for you?
So I have a few of these, but
I'm not surprised.
You have to tell yourself crazy stuff if you want to believe, like if you want to go down this path. I think okay. I think if you think about that phrase, like 1% every day, like if you can try to go for 1% improvement every day, that actually compounds a lot, right? So you try to learn a new concept, one new concept every single day, learn a new topic, learn a new skill, a new technology. Because what happens is like you combine 3 or 4 skills and they give you a whole new superpower. Or like you start thinking about problems. Like a year ago, I didn't know how to do any of this, like a lot of this stuff I didn't know how to do. And every week I covered a couple new topics. And every week I gained, that ends up adding up. On the day-to-day, you don't necessarily feel it. Sometimes you're just like putting time in, you're just banking a bunch of time. But then a month later, you like your eyes open and you're like, oh, this part can be done like this. This is easy. And you start connecting dots. And that's really important. So I think it's like you just put in, especially if you want to work with AI, I think there's this like aspect of playing that's super important because and I think kids, it's like when you're playing or you're exploring a topic that you're intrinsically motivated by. This is different from like my boss telling me I got to learn AI. Yeah. That's a scarcity mindset. Curious. Yeah. There's something that you're obsessed with that you're intrinsically motivated to do. And then you put AI on that problem. Then it's not like you don't throw it at work because then that's for someone else. Someone else is telling you how to apply it. apply it to yourself where you are most motivated. And then you'll be like, it won't feel like work, right? 2 days of an all-nighter working on a music video, I'm not drained. I'm actually like, my problem is I just have to sleep. Like my problem is that I don't want to sleep because I'm like obsessed with where I'm going. And then my body is like, hey, you got to shut down. And I think that's where like, it's the opposite end of the spectrum. It's like when you attach it to your intrinsic motivation, you'll start feeling like there's not enough time for everything that you wish you could do. Like I'm thinking about this music video. I'm like, man, I can't wait to plug this music video into some tool next year and then generate a video game. Because that like, if that's where we are, you can generate images, videos, music. Like, why can't we just generate a whole video game, right? And that's kind of where my mind starts going.
An HBO series happens, and an HBO series happens, then the theme park is created, and now we're back to Roller Coaster Tycoon.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. Yeah. Yeah.
Digital storytelling.
Yeah.
Parth?
You should be playing with it. I think
exactly.
When we do this for fun, like this is so much fun.
I know.
And,
I love it. I could talk forever, but I will give the people their time to do what they want with. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for watching. Parth, you can send over social media handles, LinkedIn, anything like that. Specifically, Parth Vader, I think, is a lot of your social handles.
Yeah, it's like I have a couple different. I probably should unify this, but if you just go to parth.club, that's my website. It links to a bunch of different projects. It also links to an AI that can link to more of my stuff. So like if you end up talking to Parth on ChatGPT, there's a GPT there, and it can show you where my music video is. You can talk to it. It's not as funny as me, but he's kind of like the butler.
It tries. It tries.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for chatting with me, and I'm really excited to watch your projects, watch you see how you evolve and change, and I can't wait to play the video game that you're gonna make. And yeah, just thanks for chatting.
Thanks for having me.
Alrighty, talk to you later. Bye. And I'll just oh wait, are you leaving? You left? Oh my gosh. All right.